like let's start at the origin of, Once Upon a Time, which I know Stephen Sondheim with Into the Woods would love. Um, First I have to know, like, your fascination with, you said you really love the retellings of fairy tales, which like definitely comes through in the Book of Gothel. Um, but like what was your journey with fairy tales? Is this something that was implanted in your mind as a child? Like just you were always drawn to this kind of folklore fairy tale um magical element.
I grew up in a house by the woods, raised by hippie parents in South Louisiana, and my mother was a really big storyteller. And she told stories orally, and so she would tell us all kinds of fairy tales at bedtime, and some of them were things that she'd made up, and some of them were the classics. And then I remember like I used to take my brother and sister out behind the barn and tell them that this was the fairyland where all the flowers were, and I would have them go on this pretend elevator and close their eyes, and then when they opened them, we were in the land of the fairies, and that's like the environment that I grew up in. And then later, when I could read it, my dad gave me the Grimm's fairy tale books and all that. Like I read the Grimm's fairy tales before I watched the Disney versions. So yeah, it's been a lifelong love. And later in life, when I started reading the versions in picture books to my eldest child, I felt sort of, I mean, you have one experience with these stories as a child, and then when you come back to them as an adult, they're very problematic. Like the women are portrayed one way, the gender roles are very static and traditional. And I started to, like, I was reading beautiful picture books and I was like, this is this is I should change these. And so that's what I started doing. And then when my eldest went to bed, I started writing poems that retold them, and then a book that retold them. And that was how it all got started.
Yeah. Well, and in preparation for talking with you, because I've always found Rapunzel a really interesting, um, again, like you said, the Grimm fairy tales are gothic, dark. Cinderella, the stepsisters cut off their heel to try to fit into the shoe. Um, it's Hansel and Gretel. I mean, a witch who's going to try to bake you into cookies, and throw you in the oven is not a really exciting image that'll make you feel good. But I do think this like locked away symbolism of the tower. Like, I mean, I've always approached Rapunzel like with that almost Sigmund Freud psychoanalysis. Like, I know psychoanalysts have had a field day about like women being locked in a tower and they're like not having creative agency, and it's all about like puberty, and they're going to um go to womanhood. So that's why she's in a tower. So I'm just like curious in preparation for retelling through the witch's perspective, though, and not centering on Rapunzel. Like, why Rapunzel, Mary? Like, what is the to you that sparked something creatively?
So the way this novel was born, I was writing another book, and in that other book, which is just in a drawer, um, a character opened a box that had an old manuscript in it, and um, as I was writing the scene, I got chills, and she didn't know it was in the box, and I didn't know it was in the box, and I didn't know it was in the manuscript. And so I just kind of like stopped everything and was like, I wonder what's in this thing. And I started like writing the manuscript itself. And the way that I write is that this is going to sound very out there, but once I get into a story, I basically, it's not like I hear a voice, but I'm sort of just like writing, like automatic writing a voice. And so when I didn't know what I was writing, but I just wrote this, and she said, you have heard this story before. I was there when this happened. I was there when that happened, and it was all about, you know, the shoe on the staircase, and all these different fairy tales, not just Rapunzel. It was like I was there when all this stuff happened, but it's all wrong. Like the way that it came down, everything has. It's been a. She didn't, you know, she wouldn't use the phrase telephone game, but she was saying that, right? And then I, from that, after I wrote like, yeah, 5,000 words of, not in one day, but I kept coming back to it after I wrote like 5,000 words of just spew. I was like, my goodness, this is a really great story. Forget that other book. I'm going to write this one. And let me see when in time this might have been, like before these stories were written down, and who this character could have been that interacted with these stories. And so then at that point, like after I had all this crazy nonsense, you know, it wasn't very organized or anything. It was just this voice. I started to research it, and from there it came out that I decided that she was the witch from Rapunzel. That was one of the things that she said. And the story developed organically from that experience. Um, and the beginning of the book, not the beginning of the book in the frame, but the beginning of the book where it says Mother Gothel, they call me. That was a much later kind of, once I had done more research, you know, that was the sense that I put on it from, on
Yeah.
that crazy creative experience. But yeah.